Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hey, Maggie.
Okay, some of you might be wondering, who is Kathleen? Hang tight for that for a minute. In case you're wondering where you are, this is the Inside Out Money Podcast. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Every week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. Today, we do not have one of our rotating co-hosts. We have a special guest co-host, Kathleen, from the Minimalish Mom podcast. That's Minimalish Mom.
It is, which means it's like impossible for anyone to find me when they Google, but yes.
Well, I love the word minimalish. We'll get in. I like the ish part because it's hard to live on any extremes, as we'll discuss. But today we're going to talk about the ancient philosophy of Stoicism and how it can offer, I think, an incredibly powerful framework for navigating the emotional and tactical difficulties of improving your finances. So welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. Like, you always say a rotating set of co-hosts and guests, and like, oh, I get to be a guest now. So fun.
Well, you're not really even a guest. I consider you a guest co-host.
Ooh.
Because we don't do guests on this podcast. Like the whole, every now and then I've had like someone that I'm like friends with. I'll sort of slip in a guest, but we really don't do guests for a lot of reasons I can get into. But we're doing guest co-host every now and then. So this is going to be like a conversation.
I like it.
And I'm excited because it's a conversation on a topic that we are both passionate about.
Yes, Stoicism and how it interacts with FI.
Yeah, totally. And on a just funny note, when Greg sort of, gave his resignation as a co-host, as a formal co-host, I was like, the reason he doesn't want to do it is because I'll come up with topics. I'm like, Greg, I really want to do an episode on Stoicism. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. But he's not like excited to talk. He even loves like Buddhism. And I was like, let's do one on Buddhism. And he like, it's just not his thing, So I'm excited when someone wants to be here and wants to talk about Stoicism.
Oh, and I am honored to be that person to fill in for Greg.
So let's tell people who you are.
Okay.
Tell us like a little bit about you just so people have some context.
Yeah, so my name is Kathleen. As you said, I'm a lawyer at a big firm in DC and a mom to two kids who are now like not so little, and that makes you very aware of the passage of time. My favorite thing to do when I'm not billing, I'm not saying that my favorite thing to do is billing, but when I'm not billing for work, my favorite thing to do is to just sort of work on life design, life crafty sort of stuff. Like, how can we build better lives? And I have found that Stoicism is a really powerful tool in kind of whatever direction you're taking or build a better life. Stoicism gives like a great toolkit to help you with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many just similarities and applicable. There's so many things about the principles of Stoicism that are highly applicable and motivational towards trying to improve your finances and the things you need to do and ideally are good at to improve your finances.
Oh, yeah. And using it for improving finances and like setting ourselves on a path that's going to provide hopefully a lot of freedom like Maggie and Greg have.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's been a major focus for us for the last few years.
Well, we'll talk about that more at the end if we have time, but I know you have your own FI goals, and I should say FIRE goals, so the FI and the RE. And yeah. You're willing to talk about some of that, right?
I am. I'm actually,
okay.
I am now, as of April 1, married to a man of leisure because my husband beat me to the RE.
Yeah, that's it's nice being married to a man of leisure, isn't it?
It is. He put lunch in front of me on a Zoom call today, and it was lunch that he like made in a walk downstairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Men, that's like really attractive. I was trying to think of a nice way to say like That's what being a man is.
Oh, it's
right?
sexy as hell.
Yeah, it's sexy as hell, yes. Even if it wasn't like, I know your husband's like a very good, I'd say chef almost, but he's a very good cook. But even if you're not a good cook, someone thoughtfully bringing you lunch when you're on a Zoom call and in a back-to-back day, like how lovely is that?
I mean, I would kiss him for a microwave veggie burger.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Some like ramen would work,
Totally.
Okay, so let's jump into Stoicism and what it is. My personal like one sentence definition is Stoicism is all about focusing on what we can control, not what we can't control. But there's so much more about Stoicism that I think is worth people understanding.
Oh, absolutely. So the little bit of background to get geeky about it is that this originated in like ancient Greece, that the Stoa was the porch where the practical philosophers would like sit and talk. And Stoicism is a super practical philosophy, and it focuses on basically the whole building a better life. In college, I dropped out of the one philosophy class I took because I was like, this is too abstract and terrible and boring. But Stoicism is a philosophy of like practicality. And you're right, it's controlling. First, identify what you can control and what you can't, and then control what you can, which gives you like a sense of empowerment. And it helps you develop resilience. And life will always throw us challenges. Life will always throw us like shit bombs, if I'm allowed to say that. And if not, edit it out.
No, you can say shit bombs. Go
okay,
for
shit
it.
bombs.
I like that term. Life will throw us shit bombs. Yeah.
But having the tools that Stoicism offers can help us learn how to dodge them a little bit and just take care of them when they hit us. And I think it applies to really all areas of life.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think another interesting thing about Stoicism is Stoic philosophers, of which, there are many very popular ones, but believe that true happiness comes from living in accordance with virtue and things like wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, rather than being swayed by the external things around us. Wealth, like what people think about us, all of these other things that really are considered external, and getting to the point where you have not just like the understanding, but I'd say like the maturity too, because I think it's something like when you were talking about a philosophy class in college, I took a philosophy class in college, and I can't really remember if I was like drawn to Stoicism at the time. I don't think I was. I remember learning about it briefly, but I don't think I even yet had the maturity to like appreciate it. And with more age, I think we are of similar ages, I think comes more wisdom of really understanding that, focusing on what we can control and not focusing on all the things that we can't control, like that's really where you can find happiness. And that acceptance is huge, I think.
Oh, it totally is. And I think you're right that you can learn it, you can read it, you can hear it, and you can say like, okay, I get it, but like letting it sink into your soul is a different thing. And I think it does take a little bit of age and a little bit of experience. I know the first time I read Meditations and the second time I read Meditations, totally different experiences.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Meditations is a book by Marcus Aurelius. And we'll put a link to a bunch of our recommended Stoicism, our recommended books on Stoicism in the show notes so that you can go dig into some of those if you can. Some by the original Stoics, some that are rewritten by, more modern day people like Ryan Holiday who take, their summarizing and interpreting what was in some of the original ancient Stoic philosophies and writings.
Yeah. I think there's value in reading both the original and the new summation.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd say it's worth also saying what Stoicism is not, because I do think there are some areas where Stoicism can get a bad rap, and people misunderstand it to think that it's, being emotionless or suppressing your feelings, like, the idea of being stoic and not showing any emotion. And I don't think that's true, right? I think there's the spirit of wanting to recognize that we will experience emotions, but how we're able to recognize and manage them in a very rational way versus letting them to control us is kind of at the heart of it. And so it's not about, again, not having any emotions or suppressing that or trying to like tough it out just for the sake of it, right? It's more about developing the inner strength and really starting to like focus on what really matters. And that was, I don't think I said this, Kathleen, but like we met through Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think we both felt like very aligned to a similar way of thinking about like what matters in life. And we both had, you know, you still have, but not for long maybe, but like stressful corporate jobs, but also had a bit of like a realization of like what really matters in life and how to sort of think about the place for this and compartmentalize, the ability to like compartmentalize. And
Yeah. Well, when I stumbled across your account and like your last podcast, I thought, oh my gosh, I feel like it's so rare that I see another professional woman who's like, she's kicking ass in her job, but she also understands like, this is not everything. There's a rich life outside of it. And I don't know, it just felt like you had your priorities in such amazing order. And then you made a plan and you executed on it. And I love that. And you're like 3 years in now to your early retirement, which is amazing.
Well, thank you. And I didn't execute like blindly. I had a lot of like, you know, stutters and stumbles and, you know, fear along the way. I do think it's really helpful. And I feel the same way about you. Like, I think it's helpful to see other people who also, quote, have their priorities in order. And again, in order is subjective. So it's you know, what you and I think is in order. I think we both have a lot of alignment in terms of the Stoic way of thinking and trying to apply those principles to our life.
And you had said, I think the really important clarification that it's not about being emotionless or just toughing it out. And that's so right. It's that we can't control what happens to us. We can control how we respond to it, but it's not just being dead inside. It's like having a well-developed like ability to deal with the challenges. It's also, I think it's important to remember or to clarify for folks, another sort of bad rap thing that Stoicism has is that some people think it's kind of a selfish philosophy, because there is a lot about, you know, self-mastery, and that can start to sound like it's very much an inward turning thing, but Stoicism really isn't. I mean, the Stoics were active participants in their culture, and there's a lot about social responsibility in it. And I think as we start to talk more about money and finances, that will come into play.
Yeah, they were very active in their communities, and there was a lot of importance placed on the interconnectedness of us all as humans. And yeah, you're right. That has a lot of great applications and examples in the FI space, because one of the best parts of FI is the community that's out there, because it can feel like a very isolating path of you kind of going against the grain of not everybody, but perhaps the majority of people around you at times. So, okay. So what we want to really focus on is we want to go through these 4 core Stoic principles, because there's a lot of different elements of Stoic philosophy, but there's 4 core principles, and we want to discuss them each and provide some very practical examples and applications focused on your financial life specifically, because in case people haven't caught on, this is a financial podcast. And I hope this will really help you to understand more about Stoic philosophy, but also really gets to some like practical applications of like, what would this look like for me, you know, in my everyday life?
I think the practicality is so important. Like, this is not abstract. This will actually help you like enjoy your life more. So let's dig into it.
Yeah, I was going to say that might be what turned you off of philosophy in college, is there's times where it's so kind of like out there and philosophical, for lack of a better word, that it doesn't feel practical.
Yeah.
Right? I just think everything about Stoicism is very practical. What is such an ancient philosophy, and these examples that are so old, yet so applicable more applicable in our modern society than they even, I'd argue, were hundreds of years ago.
Oh, totally timeless. And we have like more ways to screw stuff up now. So there are more ways to apply this to our lives to make them better.
Yes. Okay, so speaking of more ways to screw things up, the first principle is focus on what you can control, which we've already teased and talked about a bit. This is really this is the central tenet of Stoicism, I would say. And Stoics recognize that we have control over our own thoughts, our judgments, our desires, our actions, but we have so little control over many external events and the actions of others.
Yeah.
Right. So they very much emphasized putting our energy towards our own internal responses and choices and not everybody else's.
Yeah, and I feel like there are two big categories there in terms of the other stuff. There's the stuff that is like writ large in society, stuff you can't control, like market fluctuations, and which tariffs, are they happening? Are they not? How big are they? What's it going to do to us? Like, we can't control that. And then there's the other people's judgments. And one of the things I found so powerful about Stoicism is like really working on shedding any care about other people's judgments. But in terms of, let's talk about focusing on what you can control. Sorry, I was getting us off on this side tangent.
No, I mean, but you're right. This is an important one just for general life happiness. Like, forget your finances. The times in my life when I've been the most unhappy are when I'm getting caught up and affected by other people's actions and letting it. I love the phrase of like, letting someone else like live in my brain rent free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many financial applications, but this is all of these have so many bigger applications in your life. But yeah, let's talk finances.
So one of the things that you can control, and Maggie, you have been such a good influence on me in this front, is budgeting and tracking your spending. Whether you want to budget or not, please, please, please track your spending. It's squarely in our control. There is immense power in knowing where your money is going. Before you encouraged me to track expenses, I thought I knew where the money was going. But my goodness, when you actually start to write down every transaction and you categorize it with sufficient like granularity, it's eye-opening.
Yeah, and shocking at times.
It's shocking. Yeah, I did not know one could spend so much money eating out.
I was exactly the same as you. Before as Mike from Friends on Fire convinced me that I needed to know this number to retire early, which is true. I believe you do need to know this number. But I thought I knew the number until I actually started doing it. And then I was like, nope, that is not the number. And I was very surprised at where money was going.
Well, and I think what is your number? What's awesome about tracking your spending is your number, like for FI, may actually be way less than you think it is. Because one, what gets measured gets managed, or however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
So when you start to track your spending, you start to make improvements in your spending. Like the things that we observe are changed by by the act of our observing them. Two, if you're a high income person where you've been like generally financially responsible, so you have been saving money, in your brain, you might think, well, what I need to retire is to be able to replace my income. But if you've been saving money and you're spending less than you make, you don't need to replace your income. You need to replace your spending. And that's like a much lower number. And so controlling what you can control by tracking your spending, it helps you get your spending under control. And it also may be incredibly encouraging because you realize that you are closer to FI than you thought possible.
And even if you're not trying to get your number down, you still need to know your number. So your goal in tracking your expenses might not be that I'm trying to slash it by 20% or something. It might just be, I just want to know what it is. I need to know what it is. And again, focusing on what you can control, you can control what you're spending. You can't control everything, right? There's times where you'd argue certain expenses are, a necessity or fixed or whatever, but there's a lot of things you can control. Hey, Kathleen, are you using Monarch?
I am not, which
okay.
I know Liz is like aghast.
Wait, what are you using though?
I just use the free numbers app that comes with my Mac. I track it old school.
Like, but in an Excel sheet.
Excel, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yes. So that's also a way to do it. Like there's apps where you can do this. I love Monarch. Liz loves Monarch. I have done it manually at times. We have some complexity in our household where it is easier for us to use Monarch, but I know a bunch of people that do it in spreadsheets. And I think that's the simplicity of that is actually very nice in many ways.
All the cool kids use Monarch, and I hear that the really cool kids have Monarch hoodies.
Oh, they do. You should email the Monarch CEO, which is what I did. I just was like, I don't even want a sponsorship. I just want a hoodie. Okay, another thing you can control is your savings rate, right? So arguably you could control your salary and your earnings, but in the short term, some of those things are what they are, right? Let's say you're a teacher and you love it and that's what you want to do. That's awesome. And teachers are amazing and they don't get paid enough, but you get paid what you get paid. And your annual increase is pretty much going to be what it is. It's not like you can negotiate for more. And there are certain jobs where you might not be able to control what you're making, but you can control what you're spending, and as a result, your savings rate. You can also control how much debt you take on, right? You could take proactive steps to reduce your debt. So, I mean, these are real examples of the financial things you can control.
Yeah, I mean, I think deciding that you're going to prioritize debt payoff before anything else, deciding on like how you want to do it. Do you want to do the snowflake method? Do you want to go after the biggest, highest interest rate first? It feels really empowering when you're like, I can make these decisions and my decisions are going to get me closer towards freedom.
Yeah. And on the debt one, it's a really good example of like, if you're already in debt, you can't control that. You can't undo the fact that you can undo it because you can pay off your debt, but you can't change the fact that as of today, you have accrued this debt. So again, you don't want to, like using the Stoic philosophy, you don't want to beat yourself up over the past. You want to focus on what you can control, which is taking proactive steps to start to pay off your debt and to prioritize paying off your debt.
Yeah. And then when you're in the great position of being able to invest, you can control your investment strategy, like to a degree. I mean, I probably don't want to go crazy, but like you can't control the market returns. You can't control, whether we have tariffs or not, like we said earlier, but you can decide, where am I going to invest? What do I see as kind of the maximum like fund cost I'm willing to accept? Where do I decide to put different types of funds? So you can diversify, you can do asset allocation and asset location. Those are two different things I learned. But yeah, taking control of your investing strategy will hurdle you towards a happier future, and while ignoring the fact that like, okay, whatever the Dow returns, it returns. I can't do a thing about that.
Very true.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about this, but it does bear stating on its own. The second big tenet of Stoicism, at least as we would summarize it, modern day philosophers that we are, is to accept what you can't control. So there are a lot of things that are outside of our direct influence, and Stoics suggest that you should accept it with, equanimity. It doesn't mean that you have resignation. It doesn't mean that you have apathy. It doesn't mean you just sort of sit back and let life happen. But it means understanding that there's just some shit in the world that you cannot have any influence over. But if we kill ourselves over worrying about it or trying to control it when we can't, it's wasted effort. And big part of Stoicism is also memento mori. Life is short. And so spending a lot of your time worrying and churning and spinning over stuff that you can't control, it's just not worth it. And frankly, it distracts you from taking control of what you can. So some of that stuff, our 24-hour news cycle makes it really easy to spin into this kind of thing. But some of it is like ignoring market volatility and the sort of, prognosticators who say, there's a recession coming. Maybe there is, but we can't do anything about it.
But yeah, you reading a bunch of articles about a recession coming and then getting all spun up about it won't change whether or not a recession comes. And if you, again, going back to focus on what you can control, if you're getting spun up reading an article about a recession, shift to what you can control, right? That's the way that you take something that could become an unhealthy behavior and turn it into a healthy behavior.
Yeah, like having adequate savings, like emergency funds.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge one, and such a great way to reduce your anxiety over the stuff that's just going to happen in life.
Yeah, because a big thing we can't control is unexpected expenses, right? They're a part of life. Like, I can't control if, knock on wood, a tree falls on my roof tonight, but I can control that I have an emergency fund, right? And that I'm prepared if all of a sudden I unexpectedly have to pay a big deductible. If my, dishwasher goes out, that I, have the money to afford it, or I can just decide to live without a dishwasher for a while, right? There's many different paths one could take from that. But I do think the idea of market volatility, unexpected expenses are just great examples of financial things that we cannot control. So don't waste energy trying to. Just prepare for them as best you can.
Yeah. Our water heater exploded in the middle of the winter a day before we were going to go on a trip. And having that emergency savings meant like, okay, it's a little bit of a hassle to get someone to come in the middle of the night, but it will be okay. All will be well. Okay, so we're talking about accepting what you can't control, but being prepared for it. You can kind of flip the script on it. Have yourself in a position of calm because you have taken care of what you can control. At this point, we could have a drinking game for how many times we say control.
Yeah, true.
So do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So next up, another sort of core piece of Stoicism is that virtue is the only true good. And this is one of those phrases that I'm like, I don't know, that's starting to sound a little abstract. What does this mean for my daily life? But what this means is that the Stoics believe that the only really true good in life was virtue. And that's, as Maggie said earlier, that's wisdom and justice and courage and temperance. What that means is that those are the things to pursue. Wisdom and justice, courage, temperance, those are the things worth pursuing. Those are the virtues worth pursuing. But external stuff like wealth, health, reputation, pleasure, those aren't bad things at all. They're just, they're sort of indifference. They're not inherently good or bad. They can be either one. So the things that are sort of always and universally worth pursuing are things like justice and courage. Wealth may be perfectly good, but it also has the ability to turn negative. Reputation, if you try to build your reputation in a way that's positive and like doing good in society, that's awesome. But reputation can also become an obsession. So things like that, they're indifference. They can go either way. They're not inherently good or bad. So if you want to lead a better life, focus first on cultivating the stuff that's really the inner character, like the justice and the courage. So that doesn't mean that, like I said, it doesn't mean that wealth or money is bad in any way. It's just that there are higher priorities and that character is more important than net worth, as much as we love the net worth that Monarch shows.
Exactly. And some of my favorite books on this topic are actually by Ryan Holiday, who's very well known. He wrote a book called The Daily Stoic. He does a Daily Stoic blog, which I highly recommend if you want like a small snippet of Stoicism delivered to your inbox every day. But he's written a bunch of books around this. One of them called Right Thing, Right Now. He's got one called Discipline is Destiny, Ego is the Enemy, The Obstacle is the Way. And I think they're fantastic books, and they're written in a very modern, digestible, applicable way. Yeah. And for the one that, Kathleen, to your point, this can be one of the ones that's, I don't think it's that hard to wrap your head around, but it's definitely harder, than less clear than some. I think some of Ryan Holiday's books are fantastic on this topic in particular.
They are. He's going through all the virtues book by book. I mean, yeah. He set himself out some real career security there with that contract.
And right thing right now is specifically the one that is right. That's the one that's focused on this.
I think so. Yeah. And then he has like Courage is Calling. I think that's his book on courage. But Right Thing Right Now, I'm pretty sure. But there are really practical ways for us to apply this in our lives, like this pursuit of virtue. One is like in the way that it applies to our money. And one is the question of ethical spending and getting your spending aligned with your values, whether you're supporting companies or practices that you believe in, or whether, what's easier is just kind of turning a blind eye and not thinking about where our money goes. And I think maybe it's just my little social media bubble, but I get the impression that there's a real groundswell of interest in ethical spending right now. And particularly when it comes to like fast fashion.
Yeah. I was just going to say ethical spending is having like a moment right now.
It is.
For various political reasons. And like, this isn't about politics, because you said, regardless of what you believe in, you have an opportunity to align your spending with your values. And, you can vote with your dollars. And there's a ton of information available to us, very easy. There's entire apps where you can type in like any company and you can see, where they donate money, what their practices are. I mean, there's a lot of fast fashion companies that don't have a great reputation for the type of labor they're using and how the pay and the benefits they provide to their staff and the impact they're having on the environment and, a bunch of different things. And so I think this is having a big moment where more and more people are recognizing that there is an opportunity for all of us as humans to do better for ourselves and quite honestly for the planet we live on altogether, to just do better in this area.
I think it's a total win when we think about where does this dollar go when it leaves my wallet? And do I like what that does to the world more broadly? And it doesn't have to be like grim and boring. I mean, if you want to not support fast fashion, but you want to be fashionable, there are consignment and thrift options that can be so fun. Like you can be a super fashionable lady or man, or you can be a super fashionable person and not be supporting like labor practices and environmental practices that leave you kind of queasy in your stomach. So I think this is where like Stoicism sometimes can get sort of the reputation of being a little like grim and boring, but I'm like, no, it can be fun.
And I will say, you can't see Kathleen and I right now, but for what it's worth, Kathleen, I would consider as like very fashionable. Me, not so much. I spend most of my days in athleisure, but like every time you're traveling, like you travel and you look nicer than I look when I'm like fully dressed up.
You are so kind.
By the way, you look super cute. You always look very put together, and you do it in a ethically sourced way. Like I love your post where you're like, my mom gave me this 20 years ago and it's still rocking, or like I bought this used, or this was my mom's old piece of jewelry or whatever, a hand-me-down. Or I think you have a very like curated wardrobe that seems very ethically sourced in very creative and fun ways. And so I think you're a good example of, you're not just like talking the talk, right? You are walking the walk.
Oh, thank you. I think it's fun. Like it's fun to have a little project. And one of my projects is how can I remix stuff and source it right and make it last? And like, I think it's a great little like creative side project, and that it's like living in accordance with your values. So thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, you're welcome. So other ways that you can bring this to life is some of the more obvious ones are just being a generous person, helping others. So Stoicism encourages kindness, it encourages justice, and there's a lot of fulfillment that can come from responsibly giving within your means, right? And your means could involve money, it could involve time, it could involve donating your stuff to people that need it. But the idea of being very giving and generous and kind to others is something that is very in alignment, and I think a good example of bringing this to life. And also related to that, avoiding excessive greed and materialism, right? So Stoics aren't, I wouldn't say like minimalist, would you agree with that?
I think that the two can overlap beautifully, but they don't have to.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. But like, they were definitely not minimalist by like definition. Well, I don't know, they kind of were. But they did not believe in the endless pursuit of more, right? There certainly were people and periods in history where it was, very elaborate, and there was, a lot of materialism and waste and a lot of, I'm trying to think of the words, but
I think they saw what excess can do to us and how it can kind of bring out some ugliness. And so there was a general desire to avoid it. And you're so right on the giving nature of it. I mean, one way I've heard it described as time, talent, or treasure. Those are the ways that you can give.
I like that. And
it's going to vary based on your stage in life and, what do you have the most of? Sometimes in life you're going to have the most time. Sometimes you're going to have the most treasure. But knowing that all of those are really valuable and that you can toggle them up and down based on what is working for your stage of life. And here's the thing, like, it's going to make you feel better as a person because you'll be like, hey, I'm actually helping people. I'm actually doing good in this world. And we get little like dopamine rushes from helping out. And you, like I said, you can do it in a way that works for you and that works with your strengths. Maybe you're a really amazing graphic designer and you don't have a lot of money, but you can help like a nonprofit, with your graphic design. That's a really cool way to be generous.
Yeah. Okay. So the last of the four kind of core principles of Stoicism is the idea of living in accordance with nature and reason. So the Stoics believed in living in harmony in the natural world that we live in, the natural order of the universe, and really using reason as our guiding principle. And so, this is one where, like, I'm curious for your thoughts on this one, Kathleen, because this is one that can be harder to understand and sort of use in practical applications.
Yeah, it can be. But I do think that it can help by thinking about it in a way like taking a longer term perspective. That, I think, avoiding immediate gratification is something that, as we learn about personal finance, it's drilled into us. But thinking beyond immediate gratification, focusing on long-term goals and well-being, focusing on like, what do you want your life and your working life to look like so that you have time to use as you wish to use it?
Yeah.
And I think that it's like avoiding the tunnel vision of, I'm just going to keep going for the next promotion, or I'm just going to keep going to buy the next car, and thinking bigger picture, like, what do I want life to look like holistically?
Yeah, I really like the way you said that. And I mean, that reminds me, this one is actually very much tied into the idea of FI and FIRE, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a trade-off that I know, just use myself as an example, and many people in the FIRE community, there's a trade-off you make at some point to say, I'm tapping out of making a ton of money for the rest of my life in exchange for having time and the ability to, think and just have more time with my kids and be more present, be more engaged in the world. And that really is living much more in accordance with nature and the way we're supposed to live, quite honestly. When I think about how I spend my days and my time now, I am much more aligned to this now than I was when I had a, demanding, stressful career in corporate America.
I love seeing like the course of your days shared on Instagram, because I'm like, that's, if kids use hashtags anymore, that's hashtag goals.
Yeah.
But I think it is all about alignment. And, the way I've thought about it is when we're working, we're selling our time. And by saving and investing, what we get to do is we get to buy back our time. The time goes from like flowing out of our pockets to others to being like ours to choose what we want to do with it. And so I think of this saving and investing as buying back my own time, my like life minutes.
Yeah, that is a great point. And it takes a bit of maturity and perspective to take a step back and decide, and I shouldn't even say maturity because it implies that you're immature if you don't have this, but like it takes perspective, I think, to take a step back and be able to kind of see the forest through the trees on like what matters to you in life and how you want to live your life.
Because it's when you're working in these like high powered, high stress jobs and you're surrounded by a bunch of other people who, we're all similarly educated, we're all similarly paid, we have similar experiences, and we spend a lot of time together. It's really easy to just have a bit of tunnel vision to say, okay, this is life, and what I'm supposed to pursue. I know I've been pretty type A all my life. Like what I'm supposed to pursue is the next promotion or the next trial victory, or, it's like, okay, this is what we do. It's easy to kind of stop thinking about it and to just go on autopilot. And I just think that Stoicism and FI help us like shake that up and be like, wait a second, what do I actually, like, what gives me joy?
Yeah.
Does Zoom give me joy?
And like shake it up and kind of shake it off eventually.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And really, really get down to what really matters to you. So, okay, that is actually a good segue to talking about some exercises that could help you leverage the principles of Stoicism for your finances. There are things you can do like negative visualization, right? And the idea of thinking about potential negative outcomes like a job loss or a market crash or a tree falling on your roof. And right, not to be pessimistic, but to appreciate what you have and that hasn't happened, and to prepare mentally and financially. And so I actually did some version of this prior to pulling the trigger on FI. I listed all the things I was afraid of, and I put a dollar amount next to them. And then I reminded myself that, look, if 80% of these things happen, I'll still be okay. and I have options and I have backup plans I could go to and all sorts of things. And so there's something to be said for writing out all the things you can't control and being ready for them in your head and in your bank account with, emergency funds and other funds.
You are so smart. You can also do things like journaling. I think there's great power in getting pen and paper and sitting down and writing about your thoughts and your feelings, how you think about money, how you feel about spending, how you feel about where your dollars are going. If you have a problem with impulse spending, spend a little time just free writing about that, thinking about it and thinking about like, okay, when I spend, how do I feel? How long does that reaction last?
Write down all the things you want to buy.
I did a list of wants and responses. Like write it down and wait for a while. And what was fascinating was like, if you give it about a month, most of those wants go away, like without having been fulfilled. And if you feel pulled around by the financial news, just get it out on paper so you can like then stop worrying about it. But I think that the journaling is awesome. Sometimes also going back and reading your old journals, which I've done before, to see your progress is super motivational.
Do you journal regularly?
Yeah, regularly, but sporadically. Like I do it a lot, but there's no like daily practice of like morning pages or something. It's just a kind of whenever I feel like it.
I know the science and the research behind the power of journaling. I've been terrible. I do it so I don't even know if I could use the word sporadically, but I've done so many attempts at it. And it's funny at times, and I never feel like I'm like good at it's the wrong word because it's like meditation. You're not good or bad at it. You just got to like do it. But I don't do it regularly enough, and I know I should. And even having this conversation reminds me. But I do think of Instagram at times as journaling. Like when I put stories up, it's a version of me journaling because sometimes I'm not sure why I'm doing it. It's nice to like write things down.
I think Liz has said like that like her stories are her journal essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys are simpatico there.
Which is okay, right? If that works for you, do it.
I think it's totally cool. You can focus on small wins, and journaling will actually help you recognize your small wins. Those little victories, like paying off a little debt, sticking to a budget, changing the category of spending a little bit, those can be super like reinforcing of themselves as positive habits.
Yeah. I think the final one is gratitude, right? So there's so much research around this, but just shifting your focus away from what you don't have to what you do have, what you're gracious for, can be incredibly powerful, right? It can reduce feelings of financial insecurity, of envy. I always give the example of, you can drive around a neighborhood and you can see every house that's bigger than yours and you can think like, oh, I wish I had a bigger house. But like, that doesn't make you feel good. Or you can look at your house, which probably has a roof, probably has walls and windows and probably has heat and air conditioning if you need it in the part of the world you live in. And you can be gracious for that because there's a lot of people that don't have a home, right? They don't have a place to be safe at night. There's kids and adults. It breaks my heart. And so I'm every day grateful for the home I have, and I'm not focused on, I wish I could have had a bigger home. I could have a bigger home. I don't want a bigger home. I'm gracious and I have immense gratitude for the home I have, and I want to take good care of her. It's a her, by the way.
I like it. Okay. Yeah, I think that when I hear gratitude practice, it sounds cheesy as hell, but in practice, doing it, it's pretty awesome. Like I try to wake up every morning and sort of have a little like prayer or gratitude in the morning before I go out of bed, because we have so much that's good in our lives.
Yeah, it is. I agree. It can be it can feel cheesy at times, but it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to bring this home. Hopefully you can tell from both of us that we are incredibly passionate about Stoicism. It is such a powerful tool for achieving a sense of financial peace and well-being. I would say just peace and well-being overall in your life, but specifically with your finances also. So you should use it, right? It is there for you. There's so many great books. We'll put a link in the show notes to some of our favorite books and resources and podcasts also, including Kathleen has a podcast. I don't know if we said that at the beginning, but you started a podcast about a year ago.
Yeah, I'm on episode 50, I think. So
exactly.
Yeah. It's called the Minimalish Mom podcast. So
And you have a number of ones that are very either on Stoicism directly or very closely related.
Yeah, I started with the whole series that it's the series on lagom, which is like a Scandinavian term for enough. And I think Stoicism, there's so much about it that's about recognizing enoughness. And so I talk about enough in your finances and enough in your time. And I think it really is woven into the whole Stoic idea. And then dotted throughout all the rest of the episodes. I say it's minimalism, Stoicism, and financial independence.
It's a great podcast. I would definitely recommend you guys check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. And yeah, so I just, we would both really encourage you to think about a couple areas where you could apply some of the Stoic exercises we talked about, or just more broadly, these principles in your own life. And again, I know we've said, control a lot, but I think we'll leave you with focus on what you can control. Don't spend your time thinking about what you can't control, and just accept that there are things in this world you can't control, but there are so many more things in this world that we can control. And when we put all our energy towards the stuff we can't control, we don't focus it on all the things we can.
You will have a happier, calmer life. If you give this a shot. I agree. Money back guarantee.
True. 100% money back guarantee. And so on the point of a happier, calmer life, Kathleen, we teased it at the beginning, but why don't you tell us just a little bit about what your personal plans are for early retirement?
Yeah, so we've been on a FI journey for a while and hit FI, and now we're sliding into RE. As I said, I'm now married to a man of leisure. He spends his days going on runs and building furniture and designing video games. And I am designing my next stage. I'm a full-time litigator, but I can't let my husband get too far out ahead of me, so I got to catch up with him.
But you got plans, right?
I got plans.
Yeah, you got good plans. Well, you don't have to get into all of them, but I'm proud of you, and you got plans, and I'm excited to see where you and your husband and your family go on this journey next. So.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you joining. I appreciate all the yous out there that are joining also. We appreciate you listening. We know your time is limited and valuable. One of the many things you can control is what podcasts you listen to. So we appreciate you listening to this one today. You can always leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it when you do that. Also, something else you can control. Right? You can go leave us a review. That's very nice of you.
Help Maggie get to 300. I think 200 was the last goal. Get to 300.
Yeah. Oh, go listen to your podcast and leave you a review also.
Oh, I'm a tiny little podcast, so that would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you to anyone who does that. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. And we also encourage you to share this episode with a friend or family member. This is a great one to share with someone and then say, hey, let's go on a walk soon and let's discuss this. If you have any thoughts or questions, we always love to hear from you, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram. Okay, thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We going round and round.